Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today, the Tyrant Queen has seized the throne, forcing the rightful heirs deep into exile. You're the sons and daughters of the once great houses. Under the tutelage of advisors, you've gathered your followers, your conscripts, and the time has come to take back what is yours. Path of Light and Shadow is a massive empire-building experience combining area control, deck management, and civilization customization for 2 to 4 players. It plays in 2 hours, is for ages 14 and up, and published by Indie Boards and Cards. It's on Kickstarter right now, so I'm going to show you how the game works, and I'll see you on the other side. This is a Kickstarter preview, so all the art and components you see here are not final. They're prototypes, so you're going to want to check the Kickstarter link in the description of this video to see all the final art and components. Here I have the board set up for a 4-player game of Path of Light and Shadow, and this is an area control game with deck building elements, and the main way to gain points in this game is to control provinces. Each of these areas is known as a province, and this one now controls that because of its banner. The game is played over 3 years. Each of these years has 4 turns essentially. So you're going to have 12 turns over the game, and in turns 4, 8, and 12, at the end of each of those years there, you're going to be getting points for different places that you control. Now for example, if it was the end of the year and we controlled this one, because I have a defense of 10, each of these is 3, 6, 9, 10, you count the circles there. And so that's a defense of 10, and so this is going to give us 10 points for controlling this province, so it's all based upon how strong the defense is. However, if we also controlled this one, and notice it's from the same type of realm here, so this is the Woodland Nations, and so was this one. So not only would I get points equal to the defense of this one that I control, now in addition to gaining those points I just mentioned at the end of the first year, if I control 2 of the same realms, or 2 provinces of the same realm like I just showed, they were both woodland nations, we'd also get this, so 4 extra points. At the end of the second year, it's 8 points. At the end of the third year, it's 12 points. So you're trying to control provinces when it's time to score, but you're also trying to control a realm, which is 2 provinces of the same type, or at least 2. There's other ways to score, but that's the main way. So let's go over how the game's played. Now at the beginning of the game, players are going to be able to select which spot they start in. Now each player is going to get a player board and a starting deck, and this deck is not necessarily the same as everyone else's. It's different depending on where you started and which province and such. Over the course of the game, you're going to be building up in different spots, which will also give you points. Now each one of these rounds, each player is going to take 1 turn, and their turns are made up of the main phase and the end phase. Now at the beginning of their main phase, they will have had 5 cards drawn from their deck. Then they can take as many actions as they want, assuming that they can sort of pay for those actions, and most of the time you'll be playing cards to pay for those actions. One of the things you can do is move your leader once per turn. You can move it to an adjacent province. So I can move from here to this one down here. But you don't have to move them. You can stay, but you can move adjacent. This is going to be important because as you try to conquer different territories, you can only conquer them where your leader is. Now there's many other actions you can take, and you'll be playing them in your play area face up as you do this. One thing is you can just do a special action from a card. You won't use the card in any other way but this action because these are multi-use cards. Like in this one says for an action you can move to an adjacent province and gain 1 point. So you can just do something that the card tells you to do. That's one option. Another thing you can try to do is conquer a province. Now they're either uncontrolled or controlled. This one's uncontrolled because it has no banner on it. So let's say this leader had moved over here for part of their turn, and now they're going to try to conquer this province that has a defense of 7 because we count all these here, and that equals 7. The big ones are 3 and the little one is 1. So then we're going to put out our attackers. So we choose them by putting them face up in front of us in our play area. So let's say these are 4 of the 5 cards we had in our hand. And we look at the strength here. We have a steadfast construct that has 2, another one that has 2, a trusted follower has 1, another one has 1. So right now we have 2, 4, 5, 6, we have 6 strength. Remember, we're trying to at least equal 7 to conquer that province. So at this point, we'd look at the card that has the highest attack, so it's this one, and we would roll this many dice, in this case 2, because the highest strength we have from this card is 2. So we'd roll these 2 dice, and we're going to see what happens. Now, this card, because it's the one that we rolled it for, becomes this. We don't use this strength. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have equaled the defense that's there. Now sometimes when you play cards, you might be able to affect things like, hey, paying a point to gain 2 strength, and some things will say, hey, if you're conquering, you get extra this or that. Sometimes you'll have abilities as well. Now remember, we needed at least 7 because this has 7 defense. Each of the big ones are 3 and this one is 1, so we had exactly 7, so we were able to put our banner there to show that we have been able to conquer it. And because that province was this type, the Hallowed Vale, we get to recruit 2 cards off the top of this deck. Now this essentially is sort of a deck building element because we'll take those 2 cards and put them face up in our discard pile as we cycle through our deck and we shuffle things back. These better cards will be coming in our deck. Now we're going to resolve ruins. We see here we have 2 of those. And so for each of those ruins we would remove a defense from here. So it would go from 7 to 5. Just like that. And this is important because remember, at the end of the year, if we still control this, we're going to get points equal to the defense. So essentially we've kind of just lost 2 points in controlling this at that end of the 4th turn, at the end of the 1st year there. However, sometimes you're going to be trying to conquer provinces that are already controlled by another player. Now this works very similarly, but the attacking player chooses the amount of cards and puts it face down in front of them. Then the defender can place as many cards as they want face down. It could be 0 if they want, but each of these have to have a defense icon on them, and then both players would simultaneously reveal. Now the defender gets to draw up however many cards they place down. They get to draw back up on their hand, but each of their cards needs to have like a shield on it like this for defense, and sometimes they'll have an ability like this one. Now we'll see this one triggers if you have a mercy of 12, you could roll 3 additional dice. And there's different card effects throughout the game which will push you towards being cruel or merciful on this track, and as we just saw, how certain cards interact with this track. Then if the attacker had any abilities, they would resolve them, but then they'd roll the attack dice just like before, and like here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, because these dice are essentially this card's attack strength. So we have 8, and this controlled province is at 7, so we're up by 1. Now we look here, we have this defensive card. Now this is the highest strength one. They would have rolled the dice 2, and so this die is their highest attacker, which is this. And because it's defense, it's able to do this. And so we have 2 here added to the 7 that's out there, and so it's a total of 9. And so it is not a successful conquer. Now the attacker must resolve the total ruin rolled by the defender. So we have a 1 there. And so they must cull cards played during this conquer action until they've culled cards with a total strength greater than or equal to that ruin rolled. So with a 1 strength, we'd need to cull one of these cards. Now normally that card would go to the bottom of the deck where it came from, but since it's a starter card, it just gets removed from the game. Now for an action, you can play cards to cull them, and it improves your deck in exchange for losing morality. So first you'd play a card from your hand for its strength value. So let's say we just played this one. Then we take that many cards, because that strength is 1, we'll take 1 card from our discard pile or our hand, and we can cull it. And we cull it by, if it's a starting card, we get rid of it. If it comes from one of the decks, we put it at the bottom of that deck. But you do gain a cruelty for each card that you cull like this. Now let's say it was our turn, it was the beginning of our turn, and we just placed our cards like this, and we're looking at this value here. We have 2 and 2. Now that's going to allow us to build something up to a level of 4, which is going to allow us to build a specific structure. For example, let's say we wanted to move this here. We've spent the 4 of the labor, which is the hammer, and this is the Outland Tavern. And then when I promote a card, gain 1 cruelty or 1 mercy. That brings us to the next possible action, which is promoting a card. But before we get there, let me just tell you a little bit more about this. As you work your way down, like here, you need to play 6 labor in order to get down to this one, then 8, then 10. Now, at the end of the game, you're going to get a point for each level that you've built at. So this is going to get us 1 point. Here would get us 2, 3, and 4. Plus, level 4 will typically give you some points depending on that. Now, wherever you are, you're able to use the ability of this and all the abilities above. So you're working down different tracks and gaining different abilities as you do that. And of course, those are always converting to points at the end of the game as well. Now promoting a card, let's say we wanted to promote this card. This shows us what this card could be promoted to. It was a trusted follower, and it could become a trusted loyalist. It actually shows you the stats of what that improved version is going to be, or that promoted version. And it shows us what we need in order to do this. We need 2 labor. So we're going to do this, and this could be a card from your hand or a card from your discard pile, and we're promoting it. And we're going to need 2 labor. So we play 2 more cards that equal 2 labor. This card gets returned to where it's supposed to go. If it's a starter card, it's out of the game. If it's a deck, it goes to the bottom of that deck. But we're now going to find the trusted loyalist from that faction's upgrade deck. Now these decks are all face up at the bottom of the board. We know it's common folk because this is the icon that was on that card of the trusted follower. And we're going to try to find the trusted loyalist. We just get to look through it and find it. And we place that card in the discard pile. So this trusted loyalist now has 2+2+, and this card gains 1 strength for every 4 cruelty you have, and this card gains 1 labor for every 4 mercy you have. So you can decide which way you're going to go and how that benefits you. But it also looks like this one can also be promoted to a trusted consul. It's going to give you 5 labor and 3 strength, but it's going to cost 6 labor in order to do that. So let's say we were able to promote that. That would end up turning into the trusted console, because this card would now go back to that deck. And we would get this, which is going to give us 5 labor, 3 strength, and if you have 12 cruelty or mercy when you play this card, you can play up to 2 cards in your discard pile to the top of your deck. Now, this is a deck building game as well, so points at the end of the game are also going to be for the cards that you have purchased, if you will, or promoted. Now, the last possible action you can do that I haven't talked about yet is gaining an ally. You can only do this once per turn, and if you fulfill a requirement, you can do this. Like the Royal Spy, you need to build at least 1 structure in 3 or more factions. So if you've done that, you're able to get this, which is the Royal Spy, and after you build a structure, you gain a point. It's also going to be worth points at the end of the game. And even once you have one of these, even if you no longer hold that specific requirement, you still keep the cards. So it's all different ones. There's a whole deck of these, but you only use a certain amount of these, like number of players plus 1. So this is going to make each game feel different as well. Now, after you're done with your main phase, you go to the end phase. Now, you may have certain abilities that allow you to trigger, in the end phase and such, but you'll also be recruiting a card from your province's current realm. So here we are here, so we can recruit from the Mountain Claws Empire. And that just means essentially taking 1 card from here and putting it into our discard pile. Now, you can take a second card. If you do so, you gain 1 mercy. Then you're going to take all the cards that you played and you're going to discard them into your discard pile like that. Then you'll draw up to 5 cards, and if you don't have enough there, you'll shuffle your discard pile to form a new draw deck to draw up to 5. Once each player has gone through their turn, it would go to the next turn, and again, at the end of the 4th, 8th, and 12th turn, you'll go through the scoring that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. And if it's the end of the game, you're going to get points for, again, points from the different allies you've gotten, points from all of the cards that have points on them on the bottom, 1 point for each structure that you've built. In this case, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Plus, if you got into the 4th level, you'll get more points. Like at the end of the game, gain a point for each card in your hand, deck, or discard worth 1 or more points. So you'd get this as well in addition to the 4 points. You do that for all of the different faction structures, and then at that point, whoever has the most points is the winner. Well, there you have Path of Light and Shadow, and as I showed in the overview, you're trying to build and manage your deck and leverage the different strategies within those cards to have the most influence in the end. Now, if you'd like to see all the final art and components and all the different pledge levels available, you can click the link below me in the description of this video. Now, that's going to take you directly to the Kickstarter project page, and I'm sure that Indie Boards and Cards would love your support.